Welcome to Rose Talk, where we discuss a variety of issues relating to international politics and security. This series aims to facilitate discussions to better understand the developments and their implications, as well as what could or should be done. I'm your host, Ryo Hinata-Yamaguchi, Project Assistant Professor at the Research Center for Advanced Science and Technology of the University of Tokyo. In this episode, I'm joined by Dr. Shang-Su Wu, Assistant Professor at the Rabdan Academy in the UAE. Shang-Su is an expert on military modernization, but also transport-related affairs. So Shang-Su, thank you for coming on the program and welcome.
Thank you. It's my honor.
Yeah, thank you. So Shang-Su, you and I have chatted quite often, right, about Taiwan over the years that we've known one another, about political issues, national security, transport systems, and also sort of the best places to eat in Taiwan, right? And we often debate about some of the major changes and developments that have taken place in Taiwan over the years, as well as, of course, the regional security architecture, also the environment, right? So let's start with some basic topics. And the first one I think we should talk about is from your perspective, right? How do you think Taiwan views the current developments in the Indo-Pacific region?
I think no matter from KMT perspective, okay, I can say exactly the now KMT perspective, but back to the two President Jiang's, they would like the confrontation because when the international situation is more confrontation, they choose one side, they will feel safer. And I think now the DPP administration will also prefer this way because compared to if a fully, you can say the globalized in a very peaceful environment, Taiwan will be forget. Or if they need to, for example, the other powers need to build up the relations with China, Taiwan will be sacrificed. So as long as the situation is confrontational, that will be good for Taiwan. But of course, that's just one side. On the other side is, of course, the situation now that Taiwan will face more strategic pressure from Beijing. But that's just pressure because when the situation more confrontational, Taiwan have, Beijing will have a more resource be pinned down in other front, in other theaters. So the Taiwan relatively, they will face the tight situation, maybe sometime crisis, but actually less isolated. And in Taiwan, be isolated is a very serious issue.
Right. And on that point, when it comes to sort of Taiwan's security perceptions or threat perceptions, is it all about China? Now, obviously, China is the big factor, right? But are there other developments that Taiwan sees as concerning or even threatening in the Indo-Pacific region?
No, I don't think because other threat. Okay, sometimes media or people will worry about the piracy somewhere around, but it's just a very marginal issue. I think before they argue about, can we have the armed security personnel on the ship or the armed bodyguard, those the private security company allow them to board the vessel with a Taiwan registration. That was the issue, but not a major issue. And of course, even longer back, sometimes people may concern about, Vietnam, but that's a long ago. Then 2013 due to the fishing dispute. So one time they concern about Philippines, but that concern the Philippines, that concern just about, there's a problem. Because Taiwan overall have a military superiority, so they don't worry about Philippines too much. And of course, even earlier, back to the Diaoyu Cai, incident, back to the 70s, in the 80s, even early 90s, sometimes we're concerned about Japan. But that's, I think, already the past tense. Now, almost no people mention that, except from the very pan-unification party, even not party, politician may mention, but even no media coverage out there.
Right, and you already touched on politics. When you talked about sort of threat perceptions, security perceptions, and so forth. And so let's turn to some domestic politics for a moment, right? For the last 2 or 3 decades, right, in Taiwan, there's been a lot of debates, if not even some changes in the discourse concerning Taiwan's national identity, right? I've been I've visited Taiwan on many occasions. I worked on Taiwan issues and so forth, and that is one thing that really stands out to me. Is that the discussions on national identity have changed dramatically, right? Particularly since democratization, or even the years of preceding democratization, right? It was sort of starting to boil up, right?
Yes.
And obviously, this has an impact on perceptions, right, in Taiwan. Of course, towards China, right? People's Republic of China. But how has it influenced the debates on how Taiwan should go about its security strategies and also policies?
Regarding identity, that's really changed a lot because before 1979, it didn't matter much because that time most of people in Taiwan, they couldn't go overseas. They need to get proof to get overseas. So no matter what government say, they have no chance to face the reality out of in the international environment. But afterward, gradually people could go overseas. They start to challenge because in the past they told China, then okay, but there's another one, and much bigger with a lot of confused between the RC and PRC. So that time they had to hide the free China, freedom China, and especially in Chinese itself, it will be very different. Oh, that one is 中国, this is Zhonghua. That time they kind of very tricky small things. Then of course gradually shift to current status is still attached to the RC, the regime or the official title. But of course the politician like to mention Taiwan. Even for the KMT, other partition, they will still mention Taiwan. Of course, behind that is a different meaning, but we don't go to that detail. But regarding the defense strategy, the influence probably is limited because from the Cold War time, I mean, even before the democratization from the two President Jiang, that time they already talk about 3 stage. And the Mandarin is 制空, 制海, 反登陆. Put to English, first one is air superiority, sea control, and anti-landing. Of course, if the enemy can reach to land, you don't have an air superiority. You don't have a sea control. Right. So more proper term will be the air defense, sea denial, and anti-landing. And these 3 layers of defense, I think till nowadays, no matter which party and no matter what political agenda, the military side, they always publish the white paper or any other official document, keep mention this concept. The difference is in the past, I mean, 2 decades ago, 2000s or 1990s, Taiwan never prepared any offensive capability of a fire projection to cross the strait. I mean, especially missile. That was tend to be sensitive, provocative, but nowadays fine. The US even can say ATACM. So that's another big issue now. But of course, the main reason is that China's firepower increased, the military capability increased so much. So it makes Taiwan's offensive capability look like just defensive, and offensive capability just more self-defense. And furthermore, Taiwan's offensive capability generally cannot reach China as a political center. They cannot reach Beijing. They have a very difficulty to reach Shanghai. So it doesn't look that provocative. So nowadays you can see this improved version of the defense strategy just highlight more offensive means rather than just a pure defense, just passive way. Of course, back to Ma Ying-jeou's turn between 2000 and 2016, there was some discussion say, oh, we just don't provoke China, we just maintain the harmony. So that can highlight some more passive way, like rapid fix technology for the runway is be attacked. But even that time, the missile project not be fully killed. The missile project still retained. And okay, now I think many people will see that's Tsai Ing-wen administration's credit is for the submarine project. But the submarine project, at least in Ma's turn, slowly stopped. Of course, you can say probably the government didn't pay high attention, but at least not kill. And the news did mention, the government want to start to do submarine, even maybe not as a full speed as now, but I mean the overall political tune changed a lot. But regarding the military side, the change is relatively limited.
Right. And last 2-3 years, or maybe even 4 or 5, we do see developments. In Hong Kong in particular, right? And when I visited Taipei in 2019, and that's when I took a photograph of the city there in the background here, right? When I visited Taipei in 2019, there were at that time there were already concerns about what is going to happen in Hong Kong, and obviously from there, the problems have accelerated in Hong Kong, right? And that obviously had an impact on Taiwanese politics, to a fairly great extent, right? And so, do you think that event also changed, or the developments in Hong Kong? Do you think that has also had any kind of influence on like national defense policies or perceptions and so forth?
For Hong Kong's case, probably not directly affect politics rather than the defense, because Hong Kong's case is, it just show, okay, what if you captured by, or your life determined by Beijing, what it could be. So it is just to highlight the importance of defense, is rather not to directly change. I think the only factor about Hong Kong related to defense is when that time there was a discussion, but it never turned to be policy. They said they want to let some Hong Kong refugee to come. And I think the one legislator, the one I think recently just be voted out, he even said the idea, say, hey, let the Hong Kong people came here to serve the military. Then there's a pro and con. The pro is say, okay, very anti-communist, they're anti the PRC, they come here, they will be additional, since the Taiwan's armed forces, the shortage of manpower, shortage of human resource is always an issue. So they may fill the gap. But on the other hand, say, we never know lots of people in Hong Kong they really are. Why if they are attached to the PRC, we just open a channel for more spy to come in. So there was a debate, but anyway, it didn't come to the policy.
Right. And so, again, it's really about how the politics has been influenced by these events, not so much about national defense, right? But earlier this year, the government of Taiwan published a quadrennial defense review, as you know, right? And there are quite a lot of takeaways from that document, right? It talked about sort of stronger demand for self-reliant defense posture, modernization of capabilities, and amongst the capabilities that the government was talking about, the things that stood out to me was that they placed quite a lot of emphasis on sort of asymmetric systems, right, and so forth, and also readiness against China's hybrid warfare and all of that, right? And if we look at sort of the history of the military developments in Taiwan, at one point, right, in early decades, Taiwan sort of had arguably the upper hand in terms of technologies and so forth, right? The Chinese military was large, but it was, they were using some very old or sort of unsuitable systems, right? But things have changed dramatically, right, in the last 2 or 3 decades, as you know, right? And so Taiwan this time, right, they're quantitatively and also in many ways qualitatively disadvantaged against China, right? And I think there's a strong realization to that new reality, right? And so when we look at the quadrennial defense review, and when we look at the proposals Taipei has made or has envisioned, right, for its armed forces, what were some highlights for you from that document?
The self-reliance, I think no matter which government in Taiwan, they always highlight self-reliance. And self-reliance, I think, especially highlights since the 1979, because when the US cut the official tie with Taipei. So self-reliance is, they never surprised to mention in any official document. That is definitely somehow like the Zhuche to North Korea. In Taiwan, have self-reliance, okay, the 自强. Then if you go back to country, probably a very similar term. They are that's a no surprise. Oh, but I think I highlight why they had to highlight self-reliance. I think the first reason they want to highlight self-reliance is Tsai's political agenda. Because before her campaign, the first term in 2014, 2015, before she ran the campaign for the first term, she already highlighted the defense industry is important to improve the economy. Because Taiwan's economy is somehow, okay, it's still going, but they face certain kind of bottleneck. So they hope can build out other industry, then the easiest one, no, can I say easiest one, but more self-determined is defense industry, because as long as the government willing to pay, the industry will go. And of course, another reason she never mentioned, or her official never mentioned, is the defense industry related to the voter or the group, the interest group, before they usually didn't support DPP. Because before they attached to military, and they know back to the martial law era, and of course the early democratization, they usually align to KMT. But if through this policy, they may jump to the DPP side. And okay, there's some rumors say there's a shipyard and there's a industry. Now they support DPP because DPP secure their order, okay, the funding. So that's a one side. But on the other hand, if you reason here to highlight, there could be another reason reflect to their perception to the United States. Because in the 4 years between 2016 to 2020, Trump administration was quite generous, provide various before not that much to think about, increase a lot. Then of course they may worry afterward the Biden administration may not willing to provide that much. I don't mean they will worry. I mean they don't directly conclude they will be abandoned. Or, no, not like jump that far, but maybe it'll be less generous. And so that could be another reason, but this factor is much less compared to the overall domestic need. Domestic need for self-reliance or self-sufficient, that's always a highlight. But on the one hand, is self-sufficient regarding the arms supply. This is a highlight. But on the other hand, the capabilities, the self-reliance. What I want to say that is Taiwan have some potential, haven't been fully used. For example, mobilize the civilian resource, and for example, how to optimize to maximum. Okay, maybe I maximize, but better use the conscription. So far, there's still a lot of space to improve and not be highlight much compared to the defense industry. So they probably reflect the political economy more than the overall defense. And regarding the second topic you mentioned about the QDR is so may I get because you mentioned
right. So regarding the QDR, right, the key question is like, what do you think has changed from the previous QDR? Right? I mean, do we see some new steps taken in the new QDR or new proposals in new QDR that were sort of surprising or you thought were significant? No?
I think the overall the defense the Ministry of National Defense in Taiwan, they will usually take quite gradual step. So the QDR is the inside the content is not that dramatically jump forward from the previous stance. And okay, even the QDR, I want to say something. So far, we haven't seen the policy, have a dramatic change. It still follow the path from the first 10 Taiwan administration and the second 10. There's the dramatic change now. Maybe the international situation or external situation change more dramatic compared to the QDR itself.
Right. And, it's easy to talk about capabilities, right? Like, we talk about how many, ships we need or how many aircraft we need, how many submarines, blah, blah. We can build a big shopping list of the capabilities that Taiwan needs, right? But that's sort of the easy part, right? Like, it's easy to point out the problems and the prescriptions and so forth. But the question is how to go about that. And that really comes down to resources, right? The management system, right, of the military and so forth. And regarding resources, right, and this has always been one of the key questions regarding Taiwan is, well, human resources, obviously, right, finances, technologies, and so forth, like technological access to that. Okay, and regarding human resources, right, one of the key significant developments that we have seen regarding Taiwan and also the Taiwanese armed forces itself is so this shift away from compulsory military service or national service, right? Now, has that shift, has that influenced or impacted the military and its readiness in any way?
Of course, official will definitely say no. Okay, that's their policy. They cannot say no. Right. But I think there's a two-part limit influence. The first part is before the conscription system, of course, they provide sufficient, not exactly sufficient because compared to now, it's more sufficient. They will have more people to man the position, especially for the combat unit, because voluntary soldier usually, for their perspective, of course, also conscript also have preferred. They always prefer to working under the aircon environment, working in the regular schedule. Then, but if you go to a field unit, combat unit, you don't have that kind of privilege. So they will prefer that kind of a nice environment. Then, but the conscript, because they usually have a 1 year, 2 year, they cannot choose, and furthermore, they won't likely to stay. So they will they just assign where they be assigned to. They just accept where they be assigned to. But for the voluntary, they will try to choose the relatively nice one. They don't let me choose, I won't join, this kind of bargain issue. So I think the supply for the combat unit, I think that is problem. Another one, usually not mentioned much, is conscript system also provide the low rank officer and the low rank sergeant and the non-war rank officer, the NCO, because those people will help me to help the unit to run. So it's just commander. Between commander and the soldier, they need some people to run the system. Then of course now the supply for them also drop compared to the past. And another issue is you use a conscript. Of course, conscript you say they are involuntary. They don't have a strong motive. But on the other hand, is they reflect the overall talent pool of the country. So they can get the best rate, the best from the best university to graduate with the best professional background. I heard the stories before. They let those electrical engineering graduate go to take over the missile system. They learn very quick. They even can translate the whole manuscript turned to be Chinese to make other soldiers who have no linguistic capacity still can understand how to operate the system. They can do that things. But if you use a voluntary system, those graduate, they wouldn't go to military. They will go somewhere else. But the conscripting system can ensure those talent. Okay, not everyone, but most of them will come to the military, and military can freely to deploy where they fit better. But now they don't have this kind of privilege. So I think the effect. But of course, another I think effect more is the overall people's confidence. But okay, that's a tricky thing. On the one hand is when the logistic or the lot of the negative experience of military will come out from those conscripts. So once people say, oh, we suffer this, we didn't do much about defense, we do more about the gardening, we do about the housekeeping, not really about military. So that's a negative. Or they say, oh, our equipment didn't work, the vehicle didn't work, this thing got broken. That's a negative side. But the positive side is if we let the most, at least the male population have a military experience, then if they are properly trained, they can tend to be more difficult for the overall situation. I mean, in case if China very successfully invade, they cannot know how to end. I think we can see the quite, because the positive or negative case is Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia trained the conscript very well. I remember, I even heard stories that their high school learned how to do the landmine, to pave the landmine, how to cover. So on the one hand is, that's why the civil war is so brutal, because everybody can fight, so that's quite serious. But on the other hand, that means you conquer the city or do some kind of a goal of a conventional military campaign. It doesn't mean the end. That means the people, as long as they have a resource, they can still fight back. So that will make the deterrence. They'll give the virtual strategic depth for deterrence. So that is an advantage. So, but okay, now Taiwan already choose the way to do this approach to marginalize. It probably hard to change back, at least during Taiwan's term, because that's her administration's policy. I don't think she will try to be contradictory to herself.
Yeah, she can't. It's hard to sort of backtrack on your own policies, right? And going back to you said some interesting things about management, right, of the armed forces. And so one key area regarding management of the military that's talked about almost in every single country is about jointness, right? Joint operations, joint command, and so forth. How's that situation in Taiwan's case, right? Do we see good coordination amongst the three branches, three and a half branches of the armed forces, or no?
I think that I think because jointness now is a very, you can say even fashion term in Taiwan. So I think they'll try to put the leader officers, especially mid-rank, those major, the colonel stage. They will let the three services, canvas three service study together. So that is a positive side to help them to know. Of course, there are certain exercises to ask for the coordination. But for more basic training or more daily routine, they're still quite separated. So, and of course, on the other hand, is in Taiwan's case, to do the jointness also different, because in other countries, for example, if you consider about the continental environment, the jointness could be important. But in Taiwan's geostrategy, the operational environment, it's also quite separate. because the Navy, whatever they face is something, okay, Navy, Air Force can help. The Army on land is really, okay, we cannot help anything. But vis-a-vis when Army under attack, Navy or the, okay, Air Force maybe can help, but in regarding Taiwan's situation, most Thai Air Force, if under Chinese attack, probably they have to preserve their capability rather than to provide the air defense for the ground unit or for the Navy. So how much they can really coordinate, that is not a challenge. Although there's always some advantage to do the jointness, but regarding the operational environment, the really how much can push it, that's also limited.
Right. And when you have a force that has limited resources, limited assets, but growing challenges, right? You need to make the most of what you have, right? And
Yes.
jointness is often seen as a solution or part of the solution to that, right? Now, before we move on to the next and final topic, right? One more question, since you talked a lot about the armed forces in great detail, and that is, what kinds of capabilities do you think Taiwan needs right now, right? In terms of urgency, right? What other capabilities do you think that Taiwan needs, right, for at least some minimal levels of defense against any kinds of threats? Right?
Okay, yeah, regarding the external threat, of course, namely China.
Right.
For them, there'll be two, I think two approach. I think the one is push quite well, like I say quite well, but much improving before is a strike capability. Because no matter what China's tactic take, as long as Taiwan has surrendered, China eventually need to send the force across the strait. Then if Taiwan have a more strike capability to prevent China to send or decrease the number, and how to decrease the best way is to strike them before they depart. So they can, those tactical, how to say this really nowadays called the tactical or strategic missile, but also missile which can reach, the Fujian province, the opposite side of the bases. That will help to reduce the possibility for overall invasion. So, and another thing is that this thing generally just capital intensive. So you don't need to train everybody to fight. You just need to train the proper number of these, SA, the missile, the other strike means available. But on the other hand, that means the overall defense is concentrated in very few number of people and very, I can't say narrow, but it's a relatively just a few command chain for that. So the risk is what if China can do some way to paralyze those system or capability, then Taiwan will be very, very in danger. So another way to make this kind of investment, keep the insurance for that investment, it should be, the way we know every soldier can, every citizen can be soldier, every citizen can fight, that kind of Israeli or Swiss model, that would be the fundamental way. But it's against how people living there, because people living in Taiwan, although they are under the threat from the second strongest military power in the world, their awareness or their commitment for defense, individual level, usually is quite limited. So you want to change the way of life, that's hard. I mean, if any politician to do that, probably political suicide. So they need the two capability. On-site is a very high-tech one, very intensive power, but they need a backup plan. What if those things don't work? They need the rudimentary or fundamental and grassroots level for the defense. I think the second part now is the problem.
Yeah, and when I look at the QDR, and when I also look at the developments that are actually taking place, obviously, on top of the strike capabilities that you just talked about, we obviously see some developments in the Navy, right, side of things, right, new ships and vessels and so forth. There's been, debates about some new, naval and air platforms and that, but also there are some things that require some completely new technologies or sort of newish technologies, right? For example, cyber, right? Electronic warfare systems, right? That's being talked about. And also, I guess the other thing that we do need to think about quite a lot is how to deal with China's hybrid warfare, right? And that's not just about some military things, but also like information warfare, espionage and various other kinds of things as well, right? So I guess like, the demands are actually quite high, as we have been discussing so far, right? But given some of the constraints that Taiwan faces, and this sort of allows us to transition to the next question or topic, is that security cooperation has always been talked about quite a lot, in regards to Taiwan, right? And it's always been a very, very touchy issue. There are a lot of dilemmas, or at least sort of cautions or sort of caveats, right? For the United States, right, and other like-minded states, including Japan, of course, right? But what about Taiwan, right? What kinds of dilemmas do Taiwan face in regards to security cooperation or assistance from other countries?
Oh, and regarding this topic, recently Taiwan just answered to CNN about the US have a military personnel in Taiwan.
Right.
I think that reflect the mindset is Taiwan. On the one hand, of course, they since the 1979, okay, even say the early 1970s, since they stepped into the isolation, they always welcome any interchange, any chance of interchange, any kind of chance go, no matter promote the diplomacy or further. They like that. I mean, no matter the elites or no matter the military personnel, no matter people, I think nobody was saying, that's wrong to do so. But the question is for military, so we talk about the elite first, the political elite or political leadership, they will have the first thing, mostly Taiwan's political leadership, themselves, their staff, they don't know military much. So they will say, oh, it's good to cooperate, but how much do we want to push to them, or how to really, which type military really want? I think that the cooperation maybe there's something to improve. And of course, another thing they will worry is, what if China use that to to countermeasure, and especially China haven't used the strongest countermeasure yet. Is the economy. They haven't do the strong no matter sanction or slow down the trade or find a problem with the investment from Taiwan. They haven't do so. So if one day start to this kind of taxes be applied by Beijing, I think the politician in Taiwan, the political elite in Taiwan side, they will worry about this. That's the first thing. Of course, another thing is if there any cooperation happen, then okay, we don't expect positive news, but maybe some negative news. The negative news, just like the U.S. military presence, many Okinawa, Philippines, there's some kind of a individual civilian issue may happen, dispute, and these kind of things. If that happen, then definitely will be political outcry. Then that's the political leadership will try to, no, we don't want that trouble. But okay, maybe that's still too far, but they were worried about the negative news. And for military side is the military side in terms of all Taiwan, all sectors, probably the most isolated sector internationally, because compared to others, they have a fewer opportunities to interact with outside. So of course, they still recognize, I think they will appreciate the opportunity, but for most of them, they personally, they don't experience that. So they may not feel the urgent or feel the motive to do so. But I think that's one thing. Another thing is during the international cooperation, if, for example, if you do some exercise to prove they are not that good, less capable than the international counterpart, and if there tend to be a news, they wouldn't happy to hear that because they want this about the face issue. Then of course not just about face issue for those commander, the officers. This is about their promotion. Their promotion may be screwed up by this kind of thing, so they will concerned about this. Another thing that will worry for them is actually even due to the most isolated time, the 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, Taiwan still have a officer exchange with the US and even other countries. But okay, I cannot fully confirm that, but there's a rumor say if officer do the foreign exchange, usually they'll get more difficult to be promoted because they're out of the original circle, then they will lose certain kind of network, they'll be see, oh, you are not the inside the system. So of course the overall culture inside need to change to adapt for the cooperation. Oh, sorry. And previously I recall the topic about the QDR. It's about the asymmetrical warfare. Why Taiwan need to highlight that? Of course, the reason is China's military, you can say the superiority, so they want to do so. But on the other hand, they want to highlight the asymmetrical warfare is also for the psychological purpose. because people in Taiwan, they will media different, tell them, oh, I think China, the asset more than us, range longer than us, and the firepower cover everywhere of us. That's quite negative for psychological impact. So the government have to find, say, no, 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 we have asymmetrical means. So even we are weaker, we still can bring a lot of trouble on them, and they don't guarantee win. We still have a chance to win. I think to let the people feel the chance to win, that's an important side to mention. So they have to highlight the asymmetrical means to let people say, no, 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 we are still hopeful, even we are the weaker side. Then, so I think that's a reason to get the public support for the defense.
Right, and as you said, like there's a lot of debate, not just within Taiwan, broadly, but also debates even within the military, right? Within the military institution, as you just said, right? And so going back to the thing about cooperation, because cooperation is something that is essential in terms of real defense, particularly for also smaller countries and so forth, right? When we, in recent months or even recent years, there's been a lot of debates from the US side, even in Japan and many other countries about, look, Taiwan, they're a mature democratic country, they're being bullied by China. We should help them out, right? I hear a lot of those kinds of voices, right? And I agree, right? But the thing is, we also need to think about what Taiwan wants or doesn't want, right? And so forth. Because, again, are there some misunderstandings, do you think, that you feel other countries are having towards Taiwan regarding security cooperation and that?
Okay, I think the misunderstanding, I cannot say the term the misunderstanding, but Taiwan regarding asking others help probably need to put more effort to prove Taiwan really do hard enough for itself, because that is, I think, the basic even not just international relations, interpersonal relations. You want to help someone, that person should not give up first. And I don't mean Taiwan give up, but Taiwan's attitude in this kind of situation, it should be more serious compared to what they currently do. If not, other countries so far, yes, they are willing to help. But if one day they found Taiwan, not that willing to help, tend to be more dependent, then that could be troublesome. There could be setback for the external help. So I think that's important, and we can see. Okay, maybe not a very nice example, but Israel. The Israel's example is that they get US help. Before that, they proved they can fight. They proved they are willing to fight and willing to find a way to equip themselves. But Taiwan so far, I cannot say they don't have the motive or the will or the effort, but the effort compared to the stress so far, I feel is not enough. So if external to help, it may increase Taiwan have that kind of a dependent mindset. So for example, sorry, I don't want to really say the nasty or negative things about, but because we don't know the detail. Well, I don't know the detail, but Tsai's words mentioned the U.S. in Taiwan. This thing, of course, on the other hand, is to show China, yes, we are not alone. But on the other hand, is this kind of, well, for example, if she say, "Oh, we are defense is strong," if China try, okay, she said that before. But in this moment, you highlight the foreign military presence for no matter for bargaining or for this kind of a statement. And we don't know she really consults with U.S. in advance or not. So, but this kind of a wording, I feel not that nice. We want to get the help. You not get the help is you should highlight your effort before to mention somebody is inside. So of course that's a reason is in generally no matter elite or people in Taiwan, mostly they don't have strong confidence. So they always hope they can hook to someone. Though we are more confident, we are not isolated, we are safe. But in this kind of mindset will, if you one day you let other country to help, then if Taiwan not do much enough, other country will have a strong disappointment. I think that may happen. So Taiwan should avoid to disappoint other country, to prove we have an effort to do. We do all we can do. Okay, if it's something we haven't do, please tell us we can finish, we can fulfill that. I think that would be the better attitude. Just highlight, oh, we can, with some cooperation with someone. And I think it's back to 1999, after the missile crisis in 1996, 95, US will do the military, I think, I can't say the examination, but they inspect a lot of capability inside Taiwan. And they're quite surprised the condition was not good. And after all, of course, 20 years passed, actually more than 20 years. How much Taiwan have improved from that test in the 1999? Then how much they, of course, many things improved, yes, but China maybe improve even more. So Taiwan have to show that kind of a effort, really strong effort, even can say desperate effort for survival. And in this way, we'll gain the help. And this kind of, I mean, that kind of help or the cooperation will be more lessful,
Right.
or less longer.
Right. And we so far talked about security cooperation with Taiwan, right? But obviously, the security cooperation where Taiwan is not directly involved is also relevant as well, right? U.S. Japan's security cooperation, the alliance, they have gotten stronger. We see U.S. Australia, right? U.S. South Korea, right? We see a lot of alliances, right? U.S. based alliances, right, in the Pacific. And so when we look at the developments, right, in these bilateral alliances or multilateral alliances or pacts and so forth, and developments there, does Taiwan see that how does Taiwan see those developments?
Of course, they'll always maybe envy. They hope we can participate, but we have to see for the Air Force, they have a more chance to really interact. Now the question is how much Navy or other service they do. But okay, the Air Force, I say more is still relatively limited compared to Japan, compared to South Korea. So I think Taiwan, from political side, political leader, they would think, oh, that would be good if we can have this kind of exercise, especially somehow like back to the Cold War, that kind of exercise. That's a fully not just about the military, also about the politics. That would be great, but it's difficult to directly return to that. But in the military side, they haven't experienced that. I heard an analogy. It may not be nice, but it somehow says that, okay, for example, Japan joint exercise with the US, or South Korea joint exercise with US, or of course Australia joint exercise with the US. It's like the PhD or the university level of exam. But Taiwan do the exercise is a relative high school level, because the seriousness, and of course, if you exercise or do your own people, sometimes, it's not that really fair. But if you do with the other country, you cannot really fix the exam, not fix it, fix the exercise in advance that much. This more difficult to do so. So the challenge is higher. Actually, do this kind of exercise for, I think, for the unit, for the individual in the unit, this is higher. So if you, I'm not sure Taiwan's officer will prepare to do so. But anyway, officers are officer. They give them order, they will rise up themselves to pick that standard. I think most of them, they have to do that. But from their plan, the decision maker, where they want to do that much, I don't know where they're willing to do, or maybe they see the challenge, maybe they say to rise up and say, or maybe say, no, they ruin my peaceful life. But all in all is political side should have the political leadership should have a strong urge to push military to do so. If any opportunity comes, and even before opportunity comes, they should push the opportunity to happen. But so far, I think, at the one hand you can say, or people can say, no, they really do those things on the table. But on the other hand, we really don't know how much they push that compared to push the FTA, compared to push, the visa-free agreement. I'm not sure which kind of a subject they push hard.
Right. And, when we talk about security cooperation, that we also need to think about interoperability as well, right? Not just like, frequency and quality of exercise, we need to think about interoperability, information sharing and all these other kinds of things. And so when we look at what security cooperation involves, right, obviously there's a lot of things that we have to think about, right? And obviously a lot of things that we have to debate about, especially when it comes to some internal politics, right? And you highlighted that, very, very well. And so I think, from our conversation, we're sort of reminded about how we need to sort of capture a more macro picture, right, of Taiwan and also its, national security, right? That, as many of us know, like the Taiwan Straits has been one of the major geopolitical flashpoints. Yet despite that, right, Taiwan doesn't get enough attention, right? Particularly regarding the internal dynamics that, you effectively talked about today, right? And again, when it comes to Taiwan security, obviously there's a PRC threat and so forth, and also China's reaction towards the United States concerning Taiwan, and many others. But we also need to talk a lot and properly understand the developments within Taiwan itself, right? As you have talked about. And again, it's not just about the politics, but also the economic aspects, the industrial aspects. I mean, you talk a lot about the defense industry and so forth, but also the social context as well. Yeah. And so that combination, right, is really important to properly understand what Taiwan cannot do, and what Taiwan wants or doesn't want, or what Taiwan needs or doesn't need, right? I think these are sort of things that we need to debate more thoroughly. I feel, right? So Shang-Su, thank you very much for today. It's always great talking with you. We talk a lot about Taiwan, right? In our private time, we also talk a lot about railways and so forth, right? And so that's probably the next topic that we can talk about, railway systems and international politics. So I look forward to working with you more on issues related to Taiwan and other topics, including transport issues that we often do, right? And so again, thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you too. So that's it for this episode of Rolls Talk. Thank you for tuning in, and please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, as there'll be many more episodes to come featuring some great guests. So stay tuned, and as always, take care and stay safe.